This short clip, which lasts about 10 minutes, examines what we mean by communication and looks at the different ways in which we can communicate. You can stop the clip at any time and have a think about what's been said. Okay then, let's have a look about what communication's all about. What is communication? It is the act of imparting information. Well, at least that's what the dictionary says anyway. It works between two parties. People communicate between each other. It often works with more than one medium. It's unusual that you just communicate in one way. Sometimes you do, but it's more usual that you communicate by perhaps both the written word and the spoken word together. Next thing to note is that you cannot not communicate. If you stand opposite somebody and you don't say anything, you're still communicating something. We communicate with people not only with what we write and what we say, but also by our body language, eye contact. They all communicate something. If you don't believe me that people don't expect you to communicate, next time you're having a telephone conversation, don't say anything for about 20 seconds. And the chances are you'll be asked if you're still there. People just expect some response, some feedback to what they're saying. This is what communication's all about. How do we communicate? Well, much of it is by the written word, handwriting, the printed page, or increasingly nowadays the print on a screen. Also, the spoken word is also quite important. And in this module, most of the work you'll be doing on communication will be either in terms of writing or speaking in one way or the other. But it's important to realise that we do communicate in other ways, but by our body language, by graphics, by various imagery, even by smell. Something's communicated sometimes by smell, and you'll be glad to hear that that's missed out from this particular clip. Okay, let's look about what's being communicated. Let's start with this, a clown. A picture can convey a lot about people from their expressions. We're partly conditioned what to expect, so clowns are meant to be happy people. The fact that clowns have exaggerated, turned up smiley faces, their mouth is turned up to indicate a smile, and this communicates this image about what a clown is about. Different people communicate different things by just the way they look. So, what does this say, this first picture? Just have a think of what's being communicated there. Happy, sad, vivacious, morose, boring. Which words come to mind? Here we are. Second one. Ask yourself what's being communicated here. If you don't believe that people speak by their eyes, this is a good example of this coming over. Another example here. No words are necessary to understand what message is being conveyed by this person on this occasion. Another one. This time the recognition of the character is tied up with the message that you interpret from this. You recognise the person, you recognise what that stands for, and so that's a bit of a message conveyed. This happens a lot. Here's another one. What's being conveyed is very much in terms of what the character stands for, but nevertheless something is being conveyed to you here. Next up, 3 more pictures. First one here, right, what does this convey to you? Now the next one, okay, what does this convey? And finally, this one, what does this communicate to you? So, 3 pictures, same person, different image. What's the difference there? It's the body language, it's the clothes, it's the pose, it's a whole series of things which come together. Sometimes we're unaware of this, it just happens. Here's a speech being given. person on the left, what's he conveying to the audience? The folded arm, the slouched attitude. Doesn't exactly look excited about this, does he? But nevertheless, we know what message there is being communicated. And this happens throughout life. Here's my next one. Nice doggy. Maybe not. But this is a natural defence mechanism on the part of the animal. But it's a message that all other animals can interpret. The dog is actually communicating something. The next one. You recognise the character. You know the context it's been delivered in. And you know the message that's being communicated to the audience by this still. Now, if you were an alien that had just arrived from another world and you saw that image, you would have no idea what was being communicated to you. But you're conditioned, you know where it's come from, you've got the idea. Sometimes messages are communicated to us from remarkably simple symbols. Here's one. You know what it means? How do you know what it means? You've seen it before. But you see this symbol lots and lots of times and you know what it stands for. It communicates a clear message to you. Here's another one. You know what this is all about. Okay, so we've got some idea of different ways in which communication works. So far, of course, you haven't seen any written word, any spoken word, but you're getting some idea about how communication works. Right, how do you communicate? You communicate through the words you write. You communicate on where and how you use graphics. How you express yourself. If you talk in a very boring monotone voice, then with no expression in your voice, then people will quickly lose interest in what you're saying. Also, grammar and syntax. How you put your words together, both on the written word and the spoken word. Incorrect use of language communicates something. Now, you might wish to do that sometimes. You should always be aware about how you're doing it. In your writing, how you lay your work out. It's not just about neat handwriting, it's about how layout works. Properly laid out documents convey the message much more clearly. How you actually use the language is actually important. Here's just one example of that. So, say the words out twice, and you should be able to work out that you get two totally different meanings to this. If you haven't worked it out, just stop and work it out for just a minute. But you can either say, shoot the captain on no account, shoot the colonel, or you should say, shoot the captain, on no account, shoot the colonel. So just where you put that small pause communicates something very, very different. So language does matter. My final example, and we're nearly there now already, is an example drawn from something rather different. Just think about a sat-nav and how that sat-nav communicates with you. The outputs are both visual and sound. So you get a simplified map in front of you. It has to be simple because when you use these devices you're driving, so you don't want a lot of complexity that will confuse you, might lead you to crash the car or whatever. So there's some graphical information, but also the machine speaks to you. And the way those two work together are important, and people spend a lot of time and money designing systems like this so that the spoken word and the visual communication comes at the right speed to you in the right level of detail. Now, of course, you communicate back to the machine your position, so the flow of instructions matches your progress. Go faster, the instructions come through faster. And I think the sat-nav is a very good example of how communication works. It's coming to you by a variety of different ways. You're communicating back to the machine, so it's a two-way process. And if you think about just what communication is and you're not quite sure, just think back to the sat-nav. And at that point, I think we'll stop. So that's the end of this clip. Thank you very much.